Over the past several years, handwritten messages, now widely referred to as the Jubilee Notes of Jubilee County, have been discovered inside sealed food packaging across multiple regions. The notes contain detailed allegations of covert government experimentation involving the national food supply, pharmaceutical influence, systemic behavioral control, and long-term psychological conditioning of the population. The content alone would be enough to classify the author as unstable. However, the method of distribution presents a far more disturbing mystery. The notes have been found inside shielded food packages, products sealed through highly automated manufacturing systems designed to prevent contamination and tampering. If the packaging integrity is legitimate, whoever is responsible would require access to the food supply chain itself. To determine whether factory insertion was possible, I interviewed several food production employees. According to them, packaging lines are almost entirely automated. Human interaction is minimal. Supervision levels are high. Tampering would likely be detected immediately. This significantly reduces the probability of someone manually inserting notes during production. I then considered distribution channels. Could truck drivers be responsible? The geographic spread of the Jubilee Notes seemed to align with interstate transport routes. However, further investigation revealed distribution trucks are frequently monitored. Warehouses use surveillance systems. Many drivers operate under dashboard camera recording. Access to packaged goods is limited and logged. While not impossible, tampering during transportation would require coordinated effort and high risk. The likelihood appeared low. One of the greatest mysteries is that every Jubilee note is handwritten. The message remains nearly identical across discoveries, meaning someone would need to rewrite the same lengthy warning repeatedly by hand. This would require time, dedication, and precision. Even more unsettling, prior to the first documented discoveries in Jubilee County, the specific claims written in the notes did not appear on any known website, forum, or database. The notes reference behavioral modification experiments conducted through food additives, pharmaceutical compliance systems, media-based psychological influence, remote activation mechanisms, a classified continuation of Cold War-era research into mind control. Many dismiss the author as mentally unstable. Yet the consistency of language and strategic placement suggests intentional design. The central questions remain. Who is writing the Jubilee Notes? How are they being placed inside sealed packages? Why does the distribution follow no clear pattern, yet continues? Approximately 1 month into the investigation, I identified a pattern that changed the trajectory of this case. Individuals who had either personally read one of the Jubilee Notes or seen a photograph of one online were more likely to later claim they discovered one themselves. At first, I attributed this to coincidence or confirmation bias. Days later, I found a Jubilee Note inside my own cereal box. The packaging appeared sealed. No tears, no visible tampering. Yet the note was inside. This event forced me to reconsider the pattern. Perhaps exposure increases probability. To test this theory, I conducted a controlled exposure experiment. I visited a female friend who had never heard of the Jubilee Notes of Jubilee County. I casually asked if she was familiar with the mystery. She was not. I then gave her a detailed overview and showed her the Jubilee Note found in my cereal box. She examined it and confirmed that the packaging appeared shielded. At that time, I did not fully understand the mechanism, but if my theory was correct, exposure would be the trigger. I later asked about her daily routines, specifically focusing on food products. She mentioned she would soon open a new box of tea, as she drinks tea every morning before starting her remote job. Since food packaging seemed to be the consistent medium, I installed a small hidden camera in her kitchen, focused on the dining table and cabinet area. Over several days, I visited periodically to replace the battery and SD card. Initially, nothing occurred. I considered ending the experiment. Then I received a call. She had opened her tea box, and a Jubilee note fell out. Upon reviewing the footage, I observed something I cannot easily explain. In the middle of the night, she entered the kitchen. She turned on the light and remained awake for several minutes. She walked to the cabinet, retrieved the tea box, slightly opened the packaging, and inserted something inside. The next morning, she opened the box again. Appearing surprised when the Jubilee note emerged, she insisted the package had been sealed. She had no recollection of waking during the night. Based on the footage, I conclude that during the moments she was briefly outside the camera's angle, she likely wrote the Jubilee note herself before placing it inside the box. She unknowingly tampered with her own product. The implications are severe. According to the experiment and my theory, I can conclude that someone is able to control people from a remote place during their sleep, making them write the note and also rewriting their memories or reality function so that they think the package is closed when, in fact, it is open the entire time as they placed the notes themselves. I would have not believed it if I had not witnessed it myself, but the next theory or conclusion that I am drawn to is that someone working inside a secret society within the government who most likely is leaking information about what the government is actually planning and doing. Somehow, this person or the government is using a type of code within the notes to activate any person that reads the hidden code. I would believe that the government has been able to develop a system of activation control by hypnotizing the public through a secret and hidden way with television, radio, drugs, vaccines, etc. A few days later, I came across a note found a few years ago and posted online with the information mentioning how the government has actually managed to implant a system in all citizens, with the results deriving from Project MKUltra, and how they can use it at any time for assassination attempts or terrorist attacks that can trigger a war or fear so that the public is more pro-government control and surveillance. I think that the one behind the Jubilee Notes is a messenger who has gone rogue within the same system that put him there and now is trying to broadcast his message and warn the public. I am not entirely sure if it is a man or a woman, but certainly the person is most likely compromised, and the only way to leak the information is by the same means that the government has put upon all of us. And if this is true, then the implication is far worse than the notes themselves. It would mean that the enemy is not outside, not hiding in the woods or factories or distribution centers, but inside the architecture of the mind. It would mean that free will is something that can be dimmed, adjusted, rewritten in the quiet hours of the night without leaving a scar. It would mean that every sealed package, every ordinary morning routine, every memory of certainty could be nothing more than a carefully maintained illusion. What terrifies me the most is not the possibility of control, but the possibility that the activation has already happened and we simply call it normal life. That the code does not force violence or chaos immediately, but waits, dormant, listening, until a phrase, a broadcast, a signal aligns perfectly with what has already been planted. And when that moment comes, the public will not see it as manipulation. They will see it as choice. If the messenger behind the Jubilee Notes has truly gone rogue, then they are fighting a system that can erase them quietly. Not with prison, not with headlines, but with discrediting, with psychological labeling, with subtle reality shifts that make the truth sound insane. Perhaps that is why the notes are handwritten, repeated again and again, as if the act of writing is the only thing anchoring the author to something real. And if the only way to leak the information is by the same means that the government has put upon all of us, then the warning itself may be traveling through the very mechanism designed to suppress it. Which would mean that by reading this, by thinking about it, by trying to understand it, we may already be participating in something we do not fully comprehend.